Hello and welcome to the Not RWBY podcast. If you haven't seen my update video yet, due to extenuating circumstances, I am unable to make podcasts through Discord, as I usually do on Mondays. And so now we're here. I just really wanted to talk about this episode. It's Volume 7, Episode 11. And I want to talk about it because it's really good. Probably the best episode we've talked about on my channel up to this point. I think this might be better than Kuro Yuri. I think it is better. You know what? I'm gonna say, dude, what the heck can disagree with me? I'm gonna say this is better than Volume 4, Episode 10. It's better than any of the episodes in Volume 4. It's certainly better than anything from Volumes 5 or 7, and it's better than even the standouts from Volume 6, which a lot of those episodes I really liked. This one, it's the first time, I think this might actually be the best episode in the series, because I can't think of another RWBY episode that kept me this engaged from beginning to end. The previous best episode, in my opinion, was either Burning the Candle, which was Volume 2, Episode 6, or Heroes and Monsters, which was Volume 3, Episode 11. And both of those episodes had things that really stood out to me as bad. The kind of cringy humor from Volume 2 found its way into Burning the Candle, and then the Velvet scene in Heroes and Monsters was just an embarrassment to that episode. This episode, the only complaint I could think of is, why did Ironwood bring that briefcase to his office without checking it first? And even then, magic. It could have had, a friggin' little hand mirror thing that the seer came through, for all we know. It's the Grimm are magic, Salem is magic. You can really suspend your disbelief on stuff like that. Especially when bags are concerned, because bags and magic stuff are always bottomless pits. If you've ever seen Mary Poppins, you know this to be true. But anyway, let's get into the discussion, because I want to go a little deeper than I was able to in my review. And we will talk about this episode in the podcast next week, but we'll be mostly focusing on episode 12. I just really wanted to get some people's thoughts on this episode. And I do have some questions. I was at McDonald's and garnered some questions through Discord that I'll be answering at the end of this. But if you want to support the channel, please support the Patreon. Link will be in the description. It really helps me, and it helps keep things going at a pretty smooth pace over here. But without further ado, let's actually get into the episode. We first come in, it starts right off with Ironwood and Watts fight. I was pretty hyped for this. I love fights that play with gravity. I wish more sci-fi stuff would do fights like that. The last one I could really remember that was Inception, and that was 10 years ago now. That was back in 2010, and it's 2020 now. And even then it was very, simplified with just the rotating room, which they did practically, which was great. But this is a gunfight, and I said in my review that this is the first gunfight where having ammunition is important. Now, one weird thing I noticed on my most recent thing, I went and did this. Who is Watts counting for? And it turns out Watts is counting for himself, which makes a little less sense than him counting for Ironwood and keep track of how much Ironwood has, but maybe he doesn't know how much ammunition Ironwood has, or maybe he's keeping count of that in his head and counting out loud to keep the numbers from getting crossed. Again, you could kind of suspend your disbelief on that. Fight pretty well animated. One of the better animated fights of the post-Monty RWBY. and they really use the environment to its fullest. I was worried that this would be like in Volume 3 when they had the geysers during the Team Funky fight, where it just didn't matter. Like all the geysers did were, was it? No, wasn't the? I think the Funky fight did have geysers, but they didn't come into use. So it was the lava pits. Either way, the fact that Neon was able to rollerblade across all of that, the ruined cityscape, the lava pits, the geyser fields, if they were there, I don't remember. The environment never really came into play except to get the one environmental hit on Flint, and that's all that mattered to that fight. Here, they're using it as cover. They're running up walls and around, and here's this one shot towards the end when Ironwood tackles Watts off of the gravity biome, and they're kind of suspended in the middle, and the entire environment, the whole camera does a roll around them. It is really cool. And then at the end with the rings, he places the rings on the girder things, and creates this hard light shield around Ironwood's hand to trap him, and that's something we haven't seen in this show before. And when it comes to RWBY, I'm always kind of looking for new stuff. It's similar to Star Wars, in my opinion, where give me new shit and I'll be at least kinda happy. Yeah, and in this fight, they're both kind of battling for control. We do get confirmation on Watts' motivation, which is something I predicted back when we found out that Watts was part of the same kind of Atlas think tank that Pietro was. It really makes me wish that we would have gotten a scene with Watts and either Penny and or Pietro in this volume, but it doesn't look like that's gonna happen. And I know someone asked a question, so I'll answer why when it comes to that. I do like, with this volume, it's really hard to say what's symbolism and what's happy coincidences, because in earlier volumes, I was fully on board with just accepting, like, oh, it's just, we're looking too far into it, it's just a coincidence, it doesn't actually mean anything. But this volume, particularly with the new writers, particularly with both Eddie and Kiersey coming from, shall we say, more pretentious backgrounds in writing, and are much more like auteur theory driven people than Miles and Carrie. So Ironwood has like these two guns, right? And I think they're different colors too. Let me find a shot where you see both of them. Yeah, one of them's like gray and the other one's like black. And he loses one, and it's the one that he uses with his human side, I think it was. I saw someone posting about that when this episode first came out. How he basically loses the human half of him in this episode. Right after gaining it back, like an episode or two ago, he finally gained like a greater sense of humanity and doing the right thing. And then this episode just pushed him a little further, and now he's really acting like, for the greater good, machine calculating, okay, I have like a 90% chance of succeeding in saving everyone that's on Atlas versus a 10% chance of saving everyone on Atlas and more people in Mantle, because people are going to die regardless, so let's try to minimize the casualties here. And that's really where his mind is at. He's still trying to save everything he can and minimize casualties, even if he's going about it possibly the wrong way. And in my opinion, he's playing right into Salem's hand. This is what Salem wants. Abandoning Mantle, taking Atlas to the sky. This is exactly where Salem wants him to go. Because I don't think the Grimm have the same limitations that Dust does. I think the Grimm are very capable of flying into the upper atmosphere and even beyond, given enough time and given enough energy, which Salem is going to be giving them. Because again, the only reason why Dust has its limitations is because its connection with the Earth or whatever. The Grimm and Salem do not have those same drawbacks. And so I don't think trying to take Atlas into the sky, into space or whatever, is going to work. It might work as far as like using the Staff of Creation and getting there, but it's not a long-term plan because Salem is gonna find a way to get there anyway. And I think we'll find that out by the end of this volume. That might be how the volume ends. But back to the fight. I like Watts' gun. I like back to using weapons as like mobility things. That was a very Monty thing, and that was something that a lot of these fights the last couple volumes have really been missing. There's been some lip service, like Yang using her gauntlets to kind of blast off, or Ruby using her sniper rifle to propel herself once. But in this, Ironwood's got like pistols in each hand, and he's basically using them to fly. Like he's firing one, firing the other, firing them both at once, flapping his wings with the guns to... It's crazy. He's really taking that kind of concept further than we've seen it before. That's another thing I wish RWBY would do more of, which is taking these concepts further. I felt, especially with the maidens, Miles and Carrie have been scared to take that concept further than, oh, it's just dust without using dust, which was kind of how it was portrayed in Volume 3. And there's so many other things you could do with these concepts, and that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of the fights haven't been as good as they were when Monty was in charge, because they're almost scared to try to top him. They're scared that they're going to end up doing something better and lose people, and so they just keep trying to redo the same type of action beats, the same exact Bumblebee bit almost every single episode. And this episode, it put rest to that fear. They are certainly taking these concepts further than Monty ever got a chance to. And for all we know, this is a fight that Monty had dreamed up years ago, and they just got to it. We'll never really know. But if they say that, then I'll probably believe them. They're usually pretty honest about when they come up with ideas and stuff. Like, they could have easily been like, oh no, the maidens have been a plan, since day one. That was one of the first things. Nah, they never said that. They said that, like, oh, it was like, as Volume 2 was wrapping up post-production. We came up with the idea, and then Monty died, like, 2 months later. But Ironwood, pulling his arm out of the hard light dust. Which... we've never seen a hard light dust really break. Then again, we've never seen it, like, used to trap something. Which, again, new concept. Taking an idea even further. Like, what happens when you get, like, closed off? Like, obviously, his aura is probably the thing that kept his arm from just getting severed. Seeing as how it's, like, ripping through his skin and exposing his muscles and stuff. Yeah, and I don't think Watts expected him to do that. I know someone pointed out that Ironwood kind of pulled a Deku here. But yeah, Ironwood defeats Watts, and basically says that he's willing to sacrifice whatever it takes to stop Salem, even if sacrificing everything it takes means sacrificing the entire city of Mantle at this point. We then get, the Tyrion fight, which is a little less awesome, but it's a 3-on-1 gangbang, and I can't help but shake the feeling that Tyrion wanted to get captured. because he said that he's going to try spreading more chaos than a grim attack. I don't think assassinating one political activist would do that. Especially since he doesn't use his semblance at all in this fight. And the second thing is he's laughing the entire time. He doesn't actually ever get really frustrated. So my theory is that when he did get frustrated a little bit last episode, he was worried that they were just going to kill him and be done with him. But I think the fact that they captured him is going to play a role, and he's going to pull kind of a Joker here, which would not be the first time RWBY has done that. They did that with Torchwick in Volumes 2 and 3 as well. Had him captured at the end of Volume 2, and then at the end of Volume 3, he uses his proximity to the Atlasian ship to hijack it and use it to bomb the city. We do get some cool little moments, like Clover using his fishing hook to pull one of his claws away, then Tyrion whips around and catches the arrow, and there's a couple good shots. I love the way Tyrion fights. I love his kind of breakdance, Eddie Gordo style. The other ones, I am having trouble believing that Robin is a good huntress. All she does is kind of stand back and fire arrows, and arrows are much slower than bullets, and bullets are things that Blake, back before Volume 1, was able to deflect. Like, back in the Black trailer, the Elysian robots just opened up machine gun fire. She's just like, ding, 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 ding. Like they're nothing. And Robin's here shooting something that goes like a tenth of the speed of those bullets at a fraction of the rate, like one arrow per second. And she's thinking that she's gonna take on someone like Tyrion like that. I really don't see how Robin beats anybody in this show. But, you know, she doesn't really have to. She's more of a political idealist anyway. Who cares? But yeah, Ironwood walks into his office. He's got it all wrapped up in a sling. I know someone called it like a cast. It's not a cast. It's not made out of plaster. It's just cloth. And you wouldn't put a cast on a wound like that anyway. You'd want to just wrap it up and put it in a sling to keep it from moving. You only really use a cast when there's broken bones involved. I know I sprained my wrist back in middle school, and I didn't have a cast. I like snapped the tendon in my wrist, and they just wrapped it up and let it heal on its own. So he calls Winter. We see a little bit of Cinder watching Winter. And I think this is Cinder's plan. There's been a little confusion on Cinder's plan, because the Veil relic is still out in the wild somewhere. And so you would think Cinder would want that. She already sent Neo after the Relic of Knowledge, and she apparently pushed Ironwood, hoping that he would send someone for the Winter Maiden, and probably just assumed that he would send his right hand, most trusted warrior, Winter, there. And so I think Cinder's going to follow Winter all the way to the Maiden, and then they're going to fight at the end of this volume. Which again, like, it brings concern to me for future RWBY, because I was really expecting, more than a volume in this area. I was really expecting another 3-volume stretch like they did with the Veil and Mistral areas. Maybe they'll give us two like volumes 4 and 6 back to back for volumes 8 and 9, like a Journey to Veil and Vacuo. Veil to get the last relic, and then Vacuo. I don't know. I do know that it's greenlit for at least 2 more volumes, It'll probably be 3 more volumes before the show it goes into its end game, with volume 10 being like the finale of the Salem saga, or whatever we end up calling it. Yeah, Penny gets called back to Atlas. They all get called back to Atlas. Jean, Nora, and Ren depart to go get Oscar, who is also in Atlas Academy. And then the scene in the office is pretty intense too. I don't think it's. I think it might be more intense than the one we got in episode 2. The one in episode not episode 2. Oh god, what was it? The one where Nora told him off. Whatever one happened right after Jacques got elected. I think that was episode 7 or 8. I think that was. Because, yeah, 9 was cordially invited. 10 was as above, so below. So I think it would have been episode 8. Might have been episode 7, though. Whatever episode that was. Because Ironwood is like, the worst of it is over. The Grimm are getting battled back. We're evacuating Mistral, but Salem still has agents out there. Cinder's still out there. They should assume that Hazel's out there as well. And who knows what other agents she has working here. And Ironwood brings up some good points. Salem's been, one step ahead, and he can't trust Team RWBY anymore. Or Team RWBY betrayed his trust. Because the end result doesn't really matter here as far as Robin goes. For all Blake and Yang knew, Robin was working directly for Salem. And by telling her, they fucked everything up. For all they know. Robin did nothing to earn their trust. Ironwood was putting in the work to earn their trust. But they trusted Robin over him, and that probably stings a little bit. Especially since, they're trying to defend their actions, and who else did they tell? There's always that, when you tell someone a secret like that, a top secret or important thing like that, and then the person who told you to keep that secret finds out, it's very natural for them to think, who else did they tell? What was Yang at a bar and told the bartender was fucking Neo in disguise? He doesn't know. And it's forcing him to try to push Team RWBY away. I don't think RWBY herself says anything to defend her sister. I know Weiss is like, this doesn't matter right now. We have bigger fish to fry, which she's absolutely right. Ironwood is probably taking it a little too far, but I'm glad RWBY doesn't really say anything, because she knows it was probably wrong of them to tell Robin that, especially since nothing really amounted to her knowing. She didn't back off. Ironwood told the council, the next day anyway. And so there was no reason for them to tell that, except to create this conflict between Ironwood and Team RWBY, which, convenience for the sake of creating conflict, I'm okay with. But then after that, the seer bursts from the bag, and it kind of disintegrates and turns into, this image of Salem. And Jen Taylor probably gives the best performance in this show that she's given. Her best performance as Salem yet in this episode. There's something kind of sinister but also soothing about it. How she's all like, they could all just end if you give me the relic. There's no need for more bloodshed. Just surrender and let me rule the world. But Team RWBY knows what's up. Team RWBY knows what happens when you gather all 4 relics. And RWBY says what's been on my mind since Volume 6, which is you don't have to kill her to stop her. Ozpin stopped her before, at least once. During the Great War. We know that as a fact. There's no way Salem wasn't involved in the Great War somehow, to some capacity, trying to gather the relics then, and Ozpin stopped her handedly. Because Salem is still just one person. Yeah, she's immortal, but she can be stopped. She can be beaten. She can be knocked out, probably. She just can't be killed. And so you take all of her toys away, she can't really do anything, but time is always on her side. She will always get out eventually. She'll always outlive her prisons or whatever, and then start right back over from scratch, and she's totally fine with starting over from scratch. Watts, Tyrion, Hazel, Cinder, they're all expendable. She'll find more people like that later on down the road if she has to. And again, the camera work in this episode. Who directed this episode? Let me look that up real quick. Paula Decanini and Carrie Shawcross. And Miles and Carrie wrote this episode, which makes it the best episode that they wrote. Again, episode 11 of Volume 3 would also be a contender, but the Velvet scene really brings that episode down. Yeah, Salem is coming. They're all exhausted. If they try to fight her outright, they could all end up destroyed. And lose everything. Like, yeah, defending Mantle's good and all, but if Mantle is going to be destroyed anyway because there's no way you can adequately defend it, then might as well pull your forces back to the more defensible locations in Atlas and kind of hold your ground there up in the sky. At least then you don't have Goliaths, you only have flying type Grimm to deal with. Unless, you got one of those dragon things that can just drop, Grimm eggs or Grimm pools out in the streets that turn into fully formed Grimm. Like in Volume 3, which is probably one of the things that's gonna happen. But we have... Team RWBY are very much against this. Ironwood's going to declare martial law, which will probably just make things worse. It'll probably, make people more scared. We get all the reaction stuff. Team RWBY are under arrest, and we're going to get Team RWBY versus Aesop's next episode. And Oscar's missing. We can assume that Neo got a hold of him. And so, one of the questions I posed to Team Frostbite for their reaction, Team RWBY versus Team Aesop's, who goes up against who? Because I think RWBY versus Harriet is the no-brainer. Then Marrow and Vine, I think, are going to fight Blake and Weiss. I don't know who would be facing who at that point. Faunus versus Faunus, we'll say Marrow fights Blake, and then Vine faces Weiss, because Vine and Weiss are kind of the furthest removed from this, trust subplot. Vine hasn't really said anything about what he thinks of all this, what he thinks of teamwork, what he thinks of friendship. And Weiss did absolutely nothing to ruin Ironwood's trust as an individual. In fact, she probably gained a lot of points by turning Jacques in and showing that she's willing to sacrifice her own family to do the right thing. Even though Jacques' not blood related, but, well, he is. Whatever. He's not a true Schnee, is what I meant. There's the shot where Ironwood suppresses Ruby's scroll, where Weiss is lined up with Vine, Blake is lined up with Marrow, and Yang is lined up with Elm, and then Ruby's off screen, so because she's actually behind the desk at this point, trying to talk to Jean. So I think that's how it's gonna go down: Yang versus Elm, Ruby versus Harriet, Blake versus Marrow, and Weiss versus Vine. Or they could jump back and forth between different people. That would actually probably be cooler, but it'll also be a lot harder to keep track of, especially if they end up fighting in this office, which is a very small space to have a 4-on-4 fight. And that's the end of the episode. It was really good. I am going to now pull out my phone and look at questions. Pringles Boy asked, "Fuck, is Watts dead or not? Fuck. Yes. I can't remember who it was. I saw it on Twitter Saturday. Where one of the animators, I think. Let me look at the maybe it was Paula Decanini or Eddie Rivas, or I don't remember who it was. But they said that I'm just looking at this concept art. They actually mapped out the fight. They had this whole in the credits of this episode, right as like music by Jeff Williams pops up. I'm just seeing this for the first time, where like Watch starts and then it has kind of this pukish green color for Watts and this blue for Ironwood, and it shows like how they travel in that fight. That's really cool. They should have probably done that for all the Volume 3 episodes. Would have been a lot better and probably saved certain reviewers a lot of time. But yeah, one of them said that like Ironwood and Watts both went into Amity Coliseum. Only Ironwood came out. Carl asked thoughts on the Ironwood song. I was gonna say this. It's okay. It's kind of generic butt rock stuff. It's nice to see a fresh set of vocals on it from Caleb Hiles, who is a pretty good singer, pretty good cover singer for like anime openings and stuff. But the creative fumes have been running. Well, the creative energy has been running on fumes since Volume 4. And those fumes are with the writing. I am totally fine with Caleb and Jeff singing every single song, so long as they're not writing any of them. Because I think the writing of these songs has been very bad for the last 2 volumes. And so far in this as well. I'm not a fan of this opening song. I think it's better than, certainly better than the Volume 5 opening. And most of the songs on the Volume 6 soundtrack, but not good, not great. Holler Dude asked, will we ever see Yang's boobs come back? Hopefully. Fluffy the Beowulf said, does Ironwood jump like a Prego Man or not? I have no idea what the fuck that means. Good to see you guys taking this seriously, though. Coop asked, who will Ironwood piston dick down first? He done already did Glinda in that elevator. Mr. DJ Fly High asked, could you see a civil war happen? Did you not watch this episode? We're there. It's happening. RWBY versus Aesops are already lined up. Next is the Furry King asked, why are people liking this episode so much? Well, I went about 30 minutes talking about why this episode is amazing and probably the best episode in the entire series. Dr. Pepper asked, will Cinder do something of value? Depends on what you mean by value. She might fuck everything up, or she might end up getting the maiden powers and actually succeeding for once. Fluffy the Beowulf asks, is Crow going to fuck Clover? No. In fact, they're probably gonna fight next episode. Holler Dude asks serious question now. Do you think we'll ever get a bigger designer for the cast? Or better designer for the cast? Probably not, because everyone there, like, worships at the altar of Final Fantasy level character design, and so yeah, I think that they think that these designs are great. They are totally fine with Blake having just tennis ball circles under her coat and having zippers on her legs and just leather belts and stuff everywhere. Winter Ball asks, do you think the volume is going to end on a downer note? Yes. I do. I don't see how this volume has a real happy ending at this point. We only got 2 episodes left, and I feel like the worst is yet to come. And then Winter Ball asks, what's your problem with Aaron Wynn? Yeah, terrible costume designs. Zippers and belt buckles where there should not be zippers and belt buckles. And they even made it a point in like episode 1 of this volume, before they even got the outfit changes, that like, oh, without proper protection you could die in minutes. And then they proceed to not have proper protection for the entire show. Yeah. I am not answering that because it's stupid. Witchermall asked, do you think Team RWBY are in the right? I think Ruby and Weiss are. I think Ruby and Weiss have very serious cause for concern here, as far as like doing martial law and playing right into Salem's hands and needing to stay firm and do what Salem doesn't expect, which is for them to stand and fight. Blake and Yang are not in the right. They had no right to tell Robin about Amity Coliseum, and it's their fault that Ironwood is trying to push them away now and try to like arrest them and seeing them as insubordinate. Because without that, Ironwood probably would have listened to RWBY. Because Ironwood has shown a lot of trust in RWBY before, going all the way back to Volume 2. But now, because RWBY is Yang and Blake's leader, their actions look bad on her, and she's having to take responsibility for their stupidity. I already answered GQ Smith's first question. Do you think Mero will let RWBY get away? Possibly. I don't know. I don't know if I don't even think they're gonna need to have to get away. I think they're gonna just be Aesop somehow. Yeah, that's it. The rest, that was where I cut off the questions. I've been going for about 39 minutes now. So if you like this video, once again, like, comment, subscribe. This kind of video will probably never happen again. Hopefully it will never happen again, because this is what the podcast is for. And hopefully I don't have to cancel a podcast again. But, you know, subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do have some other videos in the works. I've been working pretty diligently, while not having access to the internet at home. And, part 2 of my quintessential breakdown of quintessential quintuplets is on its way. I have the audio done for that and uploaded to my Patreon, so support me on Patreon. $1 or more will get you access to those audio files of incomplete videos. Donate to Streamlabs if you can. It's better than trying to donate to YouTube during the streams. Follow me on Twitter at EAMediocrity4. And until next time, thank you all for watching. Bye.